I talked about how indulgent my coach was of his son, and I told him my dad didn't really care for him or his coaching abilities. Actually, he really didn't care for either my coach or my sister's softball coach, and I'll get into why. Chadwick's dad, Joe, was the coach, and let me preface this with they volunteered their time. They worked for free and were glad to do it, and it's a commitment because I think about like my daughter's 4, and if she wanted to play something, my work schedule, I get off at 5. So you need a dedicated coach that has the time to coach, has a work schedule where they get off pretty much after school to have practices. Because with baseball, when a season starts, it gets dark at 5. So a lot has to come together. So I'm grateful they volunteered their time. And I hope I'm not like my dad and I take the criticism with a grain of salt. But anyway, one thing was Joe was really indulgent of his son, Chad, like I said. And my dad didn't care for that because, like, in coach pitch, when Joe coached me, like you had to slide into home plate. It didn't matter if you hit a 1,000-foot home run, you still had to slide into home plate for some reason that was never explained to me. So when you practiced, you needed to wear long pants because if you wore shorts and slid, you're gonna scrape your legs. There's rocks up there. You're gonna tear your legs to pieces. So you had to slide. And Chad would wear shorts, and my dad's just like, well, if his son won't even obey the rules, then why should anyone else? And the kids would throw rocks. My dad hated that they threw rocks and hated that Joe was tolerant of it. Because my dad would coach from time to time when he was off work because he worked 12-hour shifts. He couldn't coach every day. He might have if he really wanted to, but I don't think he really wanted to. He was happy to help, but... And the other thing was Joe just would do some stupid things. Like he would pitch, instead of pitching the good pitchers, he'd pitch the worst pitchers. In another game, he got thrown out for reasons I never could figure out. I don't know why he got thrown out. He did something, didn't have something. He had to coach from the stands. Now, he wasn't like cussing up a storm. He didn't do that. I didn't think he was that bad of a coach, but he didn't really work on the fundamentals like he should have. He just really focused on, all right, I got these good players. Let me get these good players better instead of getting these bad players to average. But the biggest blunder he ever did, which my dad still talks about to this day, is our last game of the season. He decided we needed to add another player to the team. It was almost like we signed a free agent because we had a guy that came from coach pitch, and Joe was going to move him up to play. A couple of drawbacks. Coach pitch, the coaches pitch very accurately. Like, as long as you can swing the bat and make contact with the ball, you can get a hit. So if you're a decent hitter in coach pitch, you're going to be batting 500 plus. And this guy might have. But before this game, he hadn't practiced with us. He had never seen live pitching, because live pitching is very different. Like, some of these guys were 10 years old and big and could throw some heat, like 45, 50 mile an hour fastball, maybe faster, I couldn't say, and he was not used to that. And Joe didn't think this through and said, you know what, I'm going to make him the leadoff hitter. That dude came up to bat 4 or 5 times, and he always came up with runners in scoring position, and he struck out every single at bat. And my dad just like, what the hell was he thinking? He just brings the guy up and thinks he'll automatically get good, because a lot of pitching takes some getting used to. I struck out in my first at bat because it's different, because the coach is pitching for accuracy and a pitcher is trying to get you out, strike you out, do whatever you can. There's a learning curve. I mean, at least there was for me. There may not be for some, but Anyway, he did that, and Dad's just like, he's an idiot. And I think that's why he stopped coaching in Little League. Chad stopped playing, and a lot of my more talented teammates got conscripted onto a good team. And that's what happened, and that's why my dad was critical of Joe. All right, now my sister's team, it was slow pitch softball. Slow pitch softball's still live pitching, but it's still slow pitch. Like, they're just lobbing the ball up there, not doing that fancy wind-up motion you see on TV. So it is a game of defense, because there's going to be a lot of runs scored. So you got to get people out when you can. Like, high school and college softball is like small ball, good pitching, 1-0 games. Slow pitch softball is lots of hits. You got to take advantage of outs when you can, and have solid defense, but you could still strike people out, because I remember the coach's wife would keep score, and I just remember her yelling after every pitch, "Purdy, Purdy pitch," trying to influence the umpire to call strikes. And one time, for some reason, Eddie decided the infield had offended him. I don't remember if they got an error or what they did, but he decided, you know what? He sent all the infield to the outfield and sent the outfield to the infield. So I think my sister got to play like first base. And he made the infield play against the fence, so not to make any more errors. And my dad thought that was kind of boneheaded, because my dad was, the baby boomers, like, they took winning seriously, even for something as low a stakes as a 9-year-old girl's softball game. That was, like, Dad was big on the team winning. It wasn't one of those, it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. No, Dad was all about fair play, but he wanted our teams to win, and he wanted his kids to be good. It was important to him. Hell, it still is, because he still laments to this day about baseball, and it couldn't be less important in the grand scheme. And Eddie wasn't a bad guy, and when he did that, Dad just lost all respect for him. But I'll give it to my dad. He wasn't like in the stands criticizing the coach. He did it quietly because he was respectful. But he just, other than no, I think the only coach he actually liked was on my really awful coach pitch team I played on. He was a good coach, but one time, like the last game, he had to miss, and the assistant coach came up to coach, and he was a good assistant coach. It's just that man, he'd get to practice, and he was allergic to wearing a shirt. He was, as soon as he got to the field, he was shirtless and coaching. And he was also allergic to sunscreen too, because apparently he got like melanoma from not wearing sunscreen. But his son wasn't any good. His son was a lousy player, and that's coming from me, also a lousy player. He was scared of the ball. He was so scared of the ball, like after every at bat, he had to go to the bathroom. That's how scared he was. But his dad was convinced he'd make a good leadoff man. It was always confused me seeing these biased coaches, because I had my dad that was like, "You just ain't worth a shit." and that coach, the last game, guess who made leadoff? His son that was scared of the ball. Guess who took my place in the infield? His son, who was scared of the ball. And I didn't say anything because I was young and too polite, but I was just like, "What the hell are you doing?" Because I could field back then. I could field and I could throw, and his son could not. And his son, of course, had an error. A game full of errors and striking out, because you could strike out in coach pitch. You got 7 pitches. If you didn't hit them, that was it. And that guy, his name was Peyton. He didn't get a single hit, but his dad was just convinced he had the makings of a leadoff man. So that's kind of why my dad was critical of all those coaches, because they were biased, they made stupid decisions, but they still volunteered their time.